allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So this is the Board of Adjustment meeting. This is the meeting of the Morrison County Board of Adjustment. The board is made up of citizens from the 5 commissioner districts of the county. The purpose of the board is to review applications of property owners for relief from the strictest interpretation of the county ordinances. Our guidelines are established in state statutes, Chapter 394.27, subsection 7. The decision made by this board is the result of whether or not a practical difficulty has been determined. If the board determines there is a practical difficulty, we then review the guidelines in the form of 6 criteria questions that are answered at the end of the applicant's request. A final decision is then made. Each request is evaluated on its own unique practical difficulty. Variances are granted to the land, not to the landowner. This board may, in addition, impose conditions in the granting of variances to ensure compliance. After your public hearing is complete, you may leave if you wish. Yeah, we have one item on the agenda tonight. That's Jeremy and Jessica Lartson. If the applicants would like to come forward and pull a microphone up in front of you and state your names for the record.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Jeremy Larson.
I'm Jessica Morrison.
Okay, this is at 5998 190th Street, Randall. Application for a variance to allow for a type 3 septic on a newly created parcel and to place a home within the setback to a feedlot. This is in Parker Township. So, I think we're ready for the staff report.
All right, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay, you already introduced the variance, so I'm just going to go into the ordinance references for this request is section 1301.12, 1209.1. And here's a plat map of Parker Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the variance request received from the applicant. And then a site drawing also provided by the applicant. And then some setback illustrations. And then here is an aerial photograph of the parcel. And then some other imagery of that. And then here are some site photographs taken at the viewing on the 15th. This 80-acre lot is conforming and is in section 26 of Parker Township. It was split from a larger parcel after January 23rd, 1996. The applicant purchased the property in 2021. There is a tier 2 turkey feedlot to the east of this parcel. And then here's an aerial photograph to the parcel to the east with the green dot is the location of those barns. The applicant desires to build a home on the property and is requesting a variance to install a type 3 septic system and to be 558.5 feet from the neighboring feedlot, which is an encroachment of 441.5 feet to the east. The current residential setback from tier 2 feedlots is 1,000 feet. However, an ordinance amendment is proposed to reduce that to 660 feet. The applicant had a septic system designer and land services staff on site, an area on the upland portion of the parcel where soil conditions would allow a type 1 septic system was not found. About 1/3 of the property is wetland. And then here is another aerial photograph with the wetland layer turned on. The septic designer has determined that adequate soil separation does not exist on the property to install a type 1 septic drain field. For a type 1 mound system, at least 12 inches of separation between the soil and seasonally high water table is required. Those 12 inches of soil contribute to the 3 feet of soil treatment needed for septic effluent. 5 inches of separation was found on site. When soil conditions do not support a type 1 septic system, a type 3 system can be considered. A Type 3 system is one that deviates from the requirements in Minnesota Rule 7080 2210 to 2240. These systems are considered alternative systems and have minimum design requirements in Minnesota Rule. In the case of a Type 3 mound system, the entire soil treatment area is above the ground surface and the underlying soil is not relied upon to provide any treatment. So this property would require a mound drain field with 36-inch or 3-foot sand lift. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is residential, goal B1, objective, and those are the objectives listed there. And then in agriculture, goal A1 and A2. And then the water plan goals and objectives, groundwater goal, objective B, and the land use and development goal. 17 notices were sent. 1 email was received prior to the public hearing, and I will read that. And this is from Robert Moore. It says, this email is regarding the Board of Adjustment matter for Jeremy and Jessica Larson. As the owner of the feedlot located in the east half of the southeast quarter, section 26, township 130, range 31, Parker Township, I disapprove of this variance. I may want to expand my farming operation sometime, and this may affect my expansion in the future. If you have any questions regarding my disapproval, you may contact me. So that is that. I did put a couple of slides together, Mr. Chair, just to show where we're at, and I'm just going to zoom this in a little bit. So our current setback is 1,000 feet from the nearest animal holding area. However, on August 30th, we will be hearing a proposed ordinance amendment that would reduce that to 660 feet. So I've shown both up here on the slide. So what this first one is showing is this, let me go over here. This is the nearest animal holding area. And so all of our measurements are off of that. And so the 660 feet puts development, this would be the line, and at 1,000 feet, it's over here, and that's why we're here for the variance. However, if it's a second turkey barn that's going to be going in, and the assumption would be that that turkey barn would be placed in line with the rest of them, there is a 200-foot property line setback, and then estimating the turkey barn of about 495 feet. And then when we get to the 660 then off of this barn, that puts it completely on this property, and a 660 from here puts us to the edge of this property line here. I do have another slide. One more slide. The other thing is in this, in this area, this property to the south is actually more of a hamstring for this operation. And if you can see that, and I can zoom in too, but this home right here would also require a 660-foot setback. Right now it's 1,000 feet, so that would push a barn up into the wetland. So when you're looking at the two setbacks together, because both of them would be looked at for a third barn, assuming that the 660-foot setback is adopted, the 660 from this home puts the barn here, then you're 200 feet off the property line, then we have an estimated 450-foot long barn, and then the 660 puts that setback here, and the proposed home is about here. So the placement of this home for a third barn, if the 660 is approved, wouldn't probably be as much of an issue as this home would be. And then that is all I have. There are your finding of fact and
As long as
decision
you were
questions.
on that, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair.
You're the chair for this
Well, I am
one.
the chair. Thanks for reminding me of that. Okay, anyway, could you clarify the Ben Mueller, or the Mueller property there?
We have it under,
5001.
we have it under Moore, but apparently a Mueller owns it now. I'm not
Oh, okay.
exactly sure, so.
I see, because on,
Yeah, the comment was
Beacon,
from
yeah.
Mr. Moore, and on Beacon it says Moore.
so this is a
so-
feedlot residence then?
Yes, this is a feedlot residence, so this home right here is part of this feedlot. So
Okay,
we're not
okay.
considering this home here
Thanks for
for
clarifying
setback, yes.
All right,
Mr. Chair, may I ask a
yeah,
question?
I am the chair.
Okay, no, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, now, say that they wanted, that this house wasn't there. Ends up being a race to the counter. Then, in other words, if that house wasn't there, they could put something, what is the setback from the property line for farm?
200 feet.
So they could actually put something 200 feet from that line if the house wasn't there.
Correct.
And
Oops,
so,
excuse me.
it's kind of, it is that, thank you.
So, yes, so a barn, if it were on this portion of the property, it would need to be 200 feet off the road right-of-way, 200 feet off this side property line. Still needs to be right now, the 1,000 feet from that other home, but it would, and the extent of my picture doesn't show you, but let me get to a different slide.
Amy, is that, now, since that other barn is that close to the road, would that allow them to build something else because they're already there? Because that line is already set?
Yes, as long as they're not further encroaching and not changing tiers. But probably a third barn would put them into tier 3, and then they would need to meet all of those
They
setbacks.
couldn't stay with the same distance from the road?
Not if they're changing tiers. So if their animal units puts them over into a tier change, then they need to meet all of the setbacks. It's only if they're operating or expanding within their existing tier that they would have that ability to encroach that far.
But again, it's a first come, first served.
That's
basis
correct.
For buildings. Okay, anybody have questions? Applicant have anything to add to the staff report?
I would say,
Could you
Say-
pull the microphone really
Yes,
close to
sir.
your mouth there? Thank you.
say that they were going to build a building right in the field that would be bordering that, and say this doesn't go by and I have to meet the 1,000 feet setback, and I go down the field and I put my house in and meet the 1,000 feet setback from the existing stuff right now, and I build my house, they're still not gonna meet the 1,000 feet or even the 660 feet if they put it right next to the property, like the second place you guys were talking about. So that, either way, they're not gonna be able to put a barn on the west side of their property either way. So that eliminates that part of the problem. And the two main reasons of putting our house where we want it is it is the highest point on the property and it takes up less ag land.
Amy, can you pull up a image with contours on it?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Brent.
I'd just like, well, Amy's pulling that up, maybe the Larsons could explain again how we got to this point where we're addressing this. And I understand from being out there the other day that there's a footprint now of where a structure is proposed to go that's to be a future shed or garage, not the house. The house is actually going to go somewhere else, but this is temporarily going to have living quarters in it, which prompts us to look at this for a type 3 and placement of a home.
Yes, sir. So the reason the footprint is there to begin with is a miscommunication between myself and Amy, I believe. Amy and a couple other people that I've talked to. when I went in to apply for a variance, because I knew I didn't meet the setback, I had talked to Amy, and she said, hey, we plan on changing the zones, so why don't we wait till the spring, and we can, we'll address it then. Okay, so spring came around, and I still hadn't gone back to work yet, and I wanted to move forward with the building process, just to be moving forward on it. And I asked, is it possible for me to get a building permit for a building, and then when this setback all meet, because I thought it was gonna be gone 100%, not just reduced. So I started working on it. So I asked if I could get a building permit, which I have, to put a building up. And then when it was all voted on and stuff, I would upgrade the building permit to a dwelling permit from just a building permit. And that's kind of where I was going. And then when my wife went in for the variance for the type 3 septic, which was another hiccup for me, then that's when Amy had approached my wife and said, hey, we have a situation here, with you're not meeting setbacks, or you're not going to, because it's not going to go away. So we stopped all building, if you will. We did pour the concrete and basically covered up everything that I've already done, and we're just on hold to see what's next. That's how it's already there.
So you did have a permit for a structure,
For an accessory structure.
accessory structure.
Which does not need to meet setback from the feedlots. So the discussion was that he was going to at least pull the permit for the accessory structure, because that was planned to be built anyway. And then as progress was made on the ordinance amendment, shaking out what exactly was gonna be going to public hearing, then there needed to be some decisions made after that as far as for their living quarters within that building.
So if not for the living quarters within this proposed
That's
accessory
correct.
structure, we wouldn't have this discussion.
That's correct.
We'd just be dealing with the tier 3
septic,
septic
yes.
off to the side.
Yes.
And the proposed house,
That would.
I gotta get my directions straight,
It would be to the west.
The
To
proposed
west.
house should be.
would go
Would-
back towards the woods.
That's expected to meet setback when that's eventually built.
If it gets voted in August, right?
Correct, yes.
Right.
If the
it's
setback
not
to
1,000, yeah.
660 changes, yes.
Okay, any other input?
Mr. Chair, and I think I heard this correctly, he said if that is passed, the 660, the home plan is to meet that setback, correct? That's what I.
No,
just wait.
sir.
Not,
We still need this, if it drops to 660, we still need a variance, because that building, that footprint's there is within 100 feet. I think we're at,
Yes, I understand this building, but the intent
Yeah.
of the residents
the
in the future.
residents will be outside of the 660.
Okay, thank you.
but this building will have a residence in it.
No, temporary for the 5 years, yes.
So as long as there's living quarters within that accessory structure, we would be applying the setback. When they come in and permit the detached home, then how that permit would be written, because we allow one dwelling per parcel, is they'd be required to remove the living quarters out of this accessory structure once that house is complete.
Mr. Chair, do you have a time frame for when you were planning on possibly building this home?
Yes, I plan to be in it before snow flies.
No, I mean, if you.
5 years.
5 years from now, okay, thank you.
All right. Other input, questions? Open it up for public input. Public input at this time?
And then direct them to the podium.
Yep, step up to the podium and pull up the microphone over there. I guess it's functioning. Get as close to it as you can so we can hear you. Thank you. State your name, please.
And I'm the neighboring Feedlot. Van Mueller.
I think you have to be right up on it. Is it,
About this.
did it turn on?
No, I don't think so.
I can just talk louder if it works.
We like to be able to catch it on the recording, though.
We have the lapel one in there?
Or he can just come to the front. Why don't you just come have a seat?
No fist fighting.
Yeah.
Good evening. Ben Mueller, and I'm the neighboring feedlot. And I guess my concerns are the future, any building in the future. And being this doesn't meet any current setbacks, that's my issue with it. And the 660 is kind of a big if. If someone can guarantee me that, I have no trouble, as long as they meet that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead.
may I ask a question? When do you intend to expand the feedlot? What's your thoughts there?
My plan is in the next 5 years, probably towards the end of the 5, but in the next 5.
That's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. And clarify that one more time. You said 660 would work for you.
If he meets that 660 from the last shed there, would be the
I mean,
closest
if
point
the
to him.
ordinance changes to 660, that
Yep,
would work for you.
Then it would
Okay.
work for me. If he meets the 660 from that, not where it is currently, though. That's where I run into my problem.
Okay. I don't know that I quite followed that. Did you guys? or-
Yes,
Okay. Help me out, Dave.
oh, no, I don't know if I
'Cause-
can help you out, but is that what he's saying is the current structure as it's planned does
Which,
not
I mean,
meet the
100
660.
feet.
Yeah. Doesn't meet the standards as it is.
Yep.
And so I don't want to do any coaching here, but
And the current is 1,000. I mean,
Right.
that hasn't changed yet is the problem. And if someone can guarantee me that will change, we don't have any issues.
Okay, that's what how I understood you the first
Yeah.
time. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Okay.
And otherwise, I mean, I want to have a new neighbor. I don't want to have a feud between anyone. I want to make everything work here. But when there's no setbacks being followed, current setbacks, that's kind of the hard part. They got this far already with nothing being followed.
Thank you. Any other questions for him? Okay. Anything else to add?
That I want to make everything work and make everyone happy here, and hopefully we can move on to the next day and be neighbors.
That's a good goal. All right, thank you. Is there any other input from the public?
Paul Block, I'm the landowner directly to the south of where Jeremy's building. And my concern is, I don't understand cow units, and I don't understand, I'm in an agriculture area, Tennis's are an agriculture area right across. So, what is it? If I have 2 pigs in my barn, or he has 2 cows, Ben has 2 cows in that shed, or 40,000 birds 80 feet away, where is the setback line from? So my shed used to be a pig barn. I only raised 10 or 12 once in a while for myself and some little calves, but if he
Yeah,
moves,
if
if
you
he has to move to the west because he can't go north, because that's wet in there, isn't that encroaching on, I don't know what the setback is, but nobody stopped in to do anything from the county at my place to check some wheels, you know what I mean?
I think Amy can clarify that for you.
I certainly can. If you have 50 or more animal units, you need to be registered as a feedlot.
Okay.
And the animal units are based, it's on a 1,000-pound scale. So a cow is 1 animal unit. And so pigs, of course, are less. If you are not a registered feedlot, we would not be taking setbacks from your nearest animal holding area. So the nearest animal holding area is where we take that, the closest point of the closest animal holding area to the closest point of the proposed home.
But you have to be considered as a feedlot to begin with.
Correct, as a registered feedlot. And so you'd have to have 50 or more animal units, and you'd need to maintain that registration. You would be a registered feedlot within the county. So how we track that
I'm uneducated on it. I
is,
just want to know.
no, absolutely. So let me turn on.
Does it matter what kind of animal it is? You're a feedlot, you can do whatever you want then?
No, so this feedlot does have a conditional use permit. They have a public hearing and establish that. So which property is yours?
It's direct to the south
Okay,
of
so,
Jeremy's place.
okay, so
Oh, that
right
one-
here?
Yeah, that 160
Okay,
right there.
yep, so, we do not indicate that you have a registered feedlot, so we would not be, looking at any setbacks from any of your animal holding areas. So, and so this is, so if you see this green
Yep.
dot, this indicates a registered feedlot.
Yes,
And so that's why we concentrated on this one. So if you have a hobby farm, or if you have intermittent animals here and there, but you never at any one time have 50 or more animal units, then that's not considered a feedlot, and we don't apply those setbacks.
I'm still confused.
Okay,
So
what's confusing?
If the turkey barn has 40,000 birds in it,
Correct.
and that cow barn back there hasn't had a cow in it since Ben moved in there 2 months ago, and he puts 1 cow in there, 1 cow unit,
Yes,
then we have to go off of that building.
yes. Yep, because it is a registered feedlot, and if it's being utilized as an animal holding area, we did inquire with him as far as what his intentions were for that.
I just wonder how it affects everybody else and myself too, because I have building spots to
Yep.
deal with up there
So what
too.
we would do in your case is, so it's a 1,000-foot setback right now. So the nearest feedlot is right here. So
Yep.
essentially what is it's right now, it's a 1,000-foot radius around every one of these animal holding areas. And that keeps development 1,000 feet away from the nearest animal holding area. So for you, it would still probably be this. And so we'd be taking that setback. So that
Right.
would push into your property a bit.
Right,
And then this one too, we would do the same thing.
okay. All right, that's all I have.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Any other public input? Last call. Any other public input at this time? If not, we'll close the public hearing to public input and carry on with our questions. So, any other questions for the applicants, for staff? Are you ready for the questions? Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you. Can we put any conditions on a variance?
Absolutely.
We can, and can we attach a time limit like we do on permits? No.
No, variance is our land use right that's given, it runs with the land. And so there's no time frame that you can put on that. They're not like an interim use permit where you have to put a time limit. So a variance doesn't expire.
Thank you.
All right,
Mr. Chair,
go ahead.
I don't know if I have a question, but I got a lot of rant. If we look through, can we go back to his picture where his site is?
The site.
The
plan?
home, there.
Tell me which one, I'm not sure. which
Oh,
one it is.
just any picture that shows there's property.
The site drive?
Yep, right there's good enough.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go through a few things, it's just for thought. We just spent 2-3 months going through this stuff. And what do we talk about? Smart development out in the ag area. So we look at this guy where he wants to build his house, or any of his property, this whole area, don't even think about the setbacks, just think about his property. We don't have to split a field by having them. Remember we talked about not splitting fields. Here he's along the edge. To me, that's perfect building site. It's smart development in the rural area, okay? Now, this is why I fought so hard for no setbacks from feedlots, that we have property line setbacks. Because now, we're gonna say, and you guys all know I'm pro-ag, okay? But this brings to mind, we have to let people live. He's protecting ag. The other thing is Mr. Block came up here and talked about, worried about his property. He is not a registered feedlot, but there can never be a registered feedlot on that property in the future. So that's something that we got to think about. And we went through for 2 months of trying to rewrite all these things. And that's why I was so hard dead set against cutting them from residents or different places, because we're also hurting ag. The whole area around there, if I lived there, my dad lived on a farm, we all know he milked 30 cows, he didn't need a feedlot permit. I move in there and take over and I got 75 cows, I got to get a feedlot permit, I can't do it. So that's just something to think about, but what I want to just push through my comments is, we can't guarantee anything. I would sure hope that it wouldn't be a problem, but we can't guarantee anything. But when you look at somebody that wants to live out in an agriculture area, and we're trying to protect ag land, we're not only trying to protect the neighbor's ag land, but also the ag land that's owned by a certain person. And we talked about smart development. Where else would you have them build on there to be any smarter? That's just my rave and my comments. We'll see what it goes when we get to the questions, but something to think about that just irritates me.
Well, very good, thank you. You were mostly on the subject that we're on tonight. Anybody else have anything to add?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Dave.
You know, yeah, this is a sticky one, is that we farm, and about 10 years ago, we wanted to put a manure pit in, and we own the house. But the feedlot officer at that time told me that he didn't tell me there was a variance available. He told me if we wanted to put that pit where we wanted to, we'd have to tear the house down. And we had a chance to fix this. I know I'm getting off subject here, but I agree with, but is that now, whenever something like this makes sense, we have to go through the variance process again. And so is that, I don't know how, without a time limit, I don't know how, we can't handicap a farm that's already there either. So we'll have to work out something. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anybody else? Marv, go ahead.
Well, I hear every situation is different. And there is a reason behind some of these setbacks, because it seems like it was nice to hear that both these here individuals want to make it work. But it isn't always everyone is that way. And that's why we have these ordinances. It's sad, but that's where it's gotten. It would be really nice if we could come up with something that would make this work for all of you, because it sounds like you both want to be there and you want to make this work. You're not the general, and I would say majority of people are like that, but we don't always run into this. And how do we make this work? And as Clint said, we can't guarantee it, but if this passes this variance and Mr. Mueller comes forward in 5 years and saying, I need a variance to be 500 feet away, and I'm on this board, and I would hope that you'd say, I support that. That's kind of where it works. And that's, he said, this is where we're at right now.
Thank you, Marv. Yeah, and it does go both ways. It is ag land, and ag is given precedence, and ag is the primary objective in ag land, but as you can see right in this picture here, it's not all ag farmable land, and we need to accommodate for residential. But at the same time, first come, first serve on the setbacks. You do need to protect residents from encroachment by, feedlots. If you just have side yard setbacks, you could have a barn 200 feet away from your house. I don't know that many people would be comfortable with that. So, yeah, what is the right setback? I don't know. But there is always a variance process, which is in effect tonight, and hopefully we can look long-term enough and make the right choice. Are we ready for the questions? You have one more thing to say?
Just a question.
Okay.
It's all.
Okay. Are we ready for the questions? Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
the applicant did indicate they had something else they wanted to say. Are you?
I wasn't quite sure if he did or not. Go ahead.
It's more of a question, and that is there a way to do a dual setback, if you will? 550 feet for Mueller and 550.
Mr. Chair, are you asking like if we can grant a variance to
For
that
both of us?
property? Unfortunately not.
No.
Yeah.
Got to go through the.
That's a good
two
thought, though.
process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're ready for the questions. Okay, we have to answer these 6 criteria questions, and they all have to be answered in the affirmative to allow for the variance.
And Mr. Chair, one more thing. And you're considering the type 3 septic system and the setback from the house in the same vote?
That's a good question. Together, we good with that? See how the discussion goes, see if we've addressed both of them.
Fine, what if it goes the right way?
Well, maybe we should discuss the type 3 septic system. That should be easy enough to do. Okay, let's do that first,
So, Mr. Chair, are you separating your votes?
if that's what you guys would prefer. It would be pretty straightforward to do type 3 first.
I think we can combine them,
How many want to combine? Clint, Dave?
because we allow the house.
You're
I
good
think
with
they're fine
combined?
combined.
Okay. All right, so just keep that in mind as you're answering
as long
the
as we-
criteria questions.
As long as we address both concerns.
Mr. Chair, I think the applicant has one more.
Okay,
No, I'm not in charge of this, but I would do them separately because if I don't meet the setback for the house, it still doesn't mean I don't want a septic down further on the property. I would still put in a bathroom in that building, and I would still, the type 3 septic would still need to be there.
you'll
Granted, the
always need a
house is-
type 3 septic.
Yes, sir.
That's a very good point. That's a good
So,
point.
Mr. Chair, I think the applicant is asking that you vote on them
Yes.
separately.
Asking,
If he's going to build anything on that property, he needs a type 3 septic, no matter where he builds on the property.
and
So,
would he be able to have a bathroom in that accessory structure?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm following you.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair,
yes, go ahead, Clint.
I think when we answer these questions, let's answer them each one, so we don't have to go through it twice. We'll just have 2 votes. That's what I would recommend. Get what I'm saying?
For the
We'd
type,
have to have 2 votes to.
Yes, but when we answer these questions, if we could answer them both right away.
Just discuss them both, make
Yep.
sure you touch on both. And
Okay.
then when you vote, you'll go through the voting twice.
Okay.
Just for time, that's all.
I think we can do that. All right, thanks. Everybody on the same page now? Sound good to you?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you for your input on that. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? We're going to start out with Marv.
With the septic, absolutely. With residents, there's a bit it's going to, that makes it a bit more complicated. It is ag property, and ag takes precedence. And here, right now, that's asking for 400-some foot setback variance, and that's a bit more than I probably agree with. If it changes to 660, which we're thinking, that 100-foot wouldn't be so bad. What helps me say it's a possibility. You have the neighbor that would be infringing on. He's saying he's okay with it as long as the 660 possibly pass, and he'd be able to meet that. So it makes it a bit more complicated. So I'm not 100% sold either way at this till we come up with a real better plan, but the septic, absolutely.
Okay, any other input? Go ahead, Dave.
I think Marv covered it pretty well. The septic, yes. The infringement on ag property, I'm not so sure about. And what happens is that we got a board right now that's amenable to giving ag variances in this case. Is that 5 years from now, we don't know what's going to happen and who's going to be sitting on this board, and you know, how population changes. So what we decide tonight, you know, is going to affect it long term. I mean, is that because it's going to have to come back to a group of people, and there'll be different people than there on this board today. So I thank you for your input, but that's what I'm really afraid of here, is getting a board here that's anti-ag. Thank you.
I think we need to elaborate a little more on that type 3 septic other than
I'll talk.
Go ahead.
Okay, on the sewer system, of course, he can't find a spot to have a type 1, so he is allowable under ordinance to come in and apply for a variance to go for type 3 septic, because everything has to have 12 inches of separation. So the type 3 mound is all above ground. That is allowable with a variance. So I think with that variance, it would put him in harmony with the intent and purpose of the county land use ordinances. According for the next part, for the home development of a home, I believe is in harmony for the purposes, if you read in goal 2 in the agriculture area, achieve an appropriate balance between the continued and growing desire of people and to locate in rural settings and need to accommodate agriculture and rural land uses in the same areas. So when we look at that he has ag, his whole property is ag, he's trying to, well, there's very few places that he can put, well, type 3, they're all type 3, the whole property, but it just be, some of the other spots would even be just worse, I think. He's trying to protect the fields so that we don't put a driveway down the middle of the field. So at the same time, he's worried about protecting ag. He's worried about his neighbors. You can tell that. I just think it's in a balance. And with the balance put together with everything, I believe it's in harmony.
Okay. I guess I'd like to say the type 3 sewer system for sure, tier 3 type 3 system is inconsistent and in harmony with the comprehensive plan and ordinance. If that fails, there's plenty of room for another one. So plenty of room for a backup system. Could always go to a holding tank if necessary. But a system that treats sewage is better than a holding tank and more preferred by the county and the ordinance. He's locating it in a spot that would allow for a greater setback for the intended future dwelling, which would use this type 3 sewer system. So that's consistent with his future plans, which would hopefully get him a compliant dwelling. Going to the request today. Now, the request today is, it's a 1,000 feet, not 660 feet. So today, we'd have to say, no, it's not at all in line with the intent of the ordinance as far as feedlot setback. It's in line with the ordinance as far as residential and ag. This is a great spot, as Clint pointed out. He picked the best spot on the farm to interrupt the least amount of farmland. And it's the highest spot on the farm, which I think we would address more as a practical difficulty. It's like 20 feet higher than the other end of the property. But again, it's difficult to say that it meets the intent of the ordinance at 1,000 feet from the current feedlot. 660 would be much closer. Too bad. I think I remember being young and impulsive. Too bad he was a little too impulsive on the startup. I think he could have found a spot that would meet a potential 660, and a wait until the end of September would have confirmed or denied that. But I understand the reason to move forward. With that said, I haven't made up my mind on the setback. Anybody else on setback or on question number 1? Okay, if not, we'll move on to question number 2. Is the applicant proposing to use the feedlot in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? We're starting out with Brent on that.
I think he's proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner. We talked about, and we've heard others say here, that preserving the ag land that's there, utilizing the driveway that's existing, building the accessory structure now with use in it for temporary dwelling until the permanent dwelling is built in the future, and using that septic system, having the Tier 3 septic system there that could be utilized for both of them, all seems to be reasonable for the development of the property.
Okay, anybody else like to add to question number 2? If we address both questions with those remarks?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Number 3 then, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? I get to start that one out. It doesn't take much of a drive-by to see that, well, there's a feedlot residence, number 1, that's just very close to the buildings, which probably a non-educated eye would just assume it's a residence out in the country. There's one across the street that does not meet setbacks, and then there's yours. I don't even know if yours would be seen from the road. Probably not. Maintain the essential character, yes. To an untrained eye, it would be business as usual out in the country, mix of ag and residential. And the sewer system, it'll look just like any other type 1 system. And also, I was going to stay on question number 1. There is 10 inches of separation there. You only need 12. So a type 3 system really gives you the whole 36 plus the 10 that you've already got. So it does meet the intent of the ordinance there too. And character looks just like a type 1 system. So anybody like to add to that? Number 3.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Clint.
I agree with you on the septic system, somewhat on for the dwelling. Maintain the essential character, yes. There's houses and ag around there. Something to point out that, this applicant is encroaching on that feedlot, okay? The other thing to remember is that feedlot encroached on the neighbors also. That's already existing farm. Not the people that own it now, but they had to get a variance for them barns. Look at what the distance is. Mr. Block's property's been there for a long time. So, you know, there's got to be a variance there for that 1,000 feet, and that enables him to ever expand if he would so wish in a certain direction. So I think when we look at this, maintains essential character, it fits. There's people that's not meeting setbacks already, intentionally, unintentionally, it don't matter. I think we got to find a balance between it. That's my thoughts on it. And I think when we find a balance and look across the whole neighboring surroundings, I think it does maintain the essential character of the locality.
Okay, any additions to number 3?
No, I think that everybody's covered that pretty well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. On to question number 4. Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Clint, we're starting with you.
Okay. Circumstances due to unique to the property. I believe what's unique to the property is some of the elevation. Part of it is to maintain as much of the ag land as possible. It gives a lot more limited area to build. Yeah, he can move over and put it in the middle of that field. Then we're gonna take away some ag land. So to me, a practical difficulty is just saving some ag land, building it in the right spot, because of the elevation. Also, the same thing with his septic. Dave stated earlier there was 20-foot drop from one end of the property to the other. I think that really goes into the practical difficulty, the elevation change. So that's what I got to kind of say about them too, I guess.
Okay, anybody like to add number 4? So that did adequately address the tier type 3 system? Okay. I guess on the con side of that, I'd have to say the applicant has a huge building envelope that would have met setbacks. Tough to come up with a practical difficulty when that's the case. We've argued practical difficulties based on, on water, on on how water flows on a property, and I don't know. Each property is unique, and this one has some unique circumstances. But are they is there truly a practical difficulty? He could have easily met the tough. It would have been very tough to meet the 1,000-yard setback, 1,000-foot setback, to 660 possibly, pretty easily probably. Though we are just considering the 1,000 feet today, in reality. So, anything else on number 4? Number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Dave, starting out with you.
Well, it wouldn't appear that it isn't, the need for the variances because they chose to build there. And, because of miscommunication, or I don't think it was, an intentional, trying to get around the rules or anything. It was a feeling that this was going to fly. And so I have to say that the need for the variance for this question, the real answer is it is caused by the actions of the landowner. There's no other way to answer this one. And on the septic system, to address that one, they're exactly what Clint covered. That they have no choice. You have no choice on the septic system. That's the best place to put it on the property. And so I would say yes to the septic system and no to the building. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I'll just offer a counter to what Dave had just mentioned there. On the other side of that coin, he said that it's due to the landowner or prior landowners, but or that the need for the variance is created by actions other than the landowner or previous landowners, I would say yes, it is. It's created by other landowners of other properties and the feedlot that's in the area there as well. So it's not just the landowner or the previous landowners of this land, it's the other land in the area, and that's what we struggle with as this board is trying to balance and strike a balance between all of those things. So there's the other side of it.
No problem.
Anybody else before we go on to 6? All right, number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Starting out with Marv.
It absolutely does. I commend him for the comments he made. It made where he wanted to put that, it was to save ag property. It wouldn't be out in the middle of a field and keep the field where, as a whole there. It fits the best in that spot. With and as far as the septic, it's going to cost them a few more dollars to do that, to put a class 3, but that is what needs to be done with property. So he's looking at more than economics. He's looking at what fits the best in that piece of property.
Okay, anybody else like to add to number 6?
Chairman, I would agree with what Marv said, that with the septic system, it does involve more than economics. There is no saving any money by doing anything different there. And also on the building envelope, I don't think that involved economic considerations either. So I have to answer both, for both the septic and the building. I have to answer yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to just add that even for us, this is a complicated issue that doesn't have a ready, correct answer as far as what ordinance should be. So I would add that was part of the confusion in this. Definitely more than economics. Advice you got from Land Services was good, but misinterpreted or acted on too quickly. The whole thing is confusing. It's no setback or a reduced setback or the setback you've got right now at 1,000 feet. Which is it going to be? And as your neighbor Paul pointed out, animal units and feedlots, where they start and where they end, not too many people know. Hopefully there's been some education tonight for everybody. All right, I think, are we done with number 6? And are we ready to answer the questions? And do we want to take up the type 3 system first? Okay, on the variance request to allow a type 3 septic on a newly created parcel. Number 1, is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave?
Yes.
Number 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the Land Use Ordinance? Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Marv?
Yes.
Will you okay? Will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? My answer is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
And Brent?
Yes.
Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And myself is yes. Is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Dave Brucher?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself was yes. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave Brucher.
Yes.
Okay, all the questions were answered in the affirmative. Is there a motion to grant the variance request for the type 3 septic?
I would make that motion.
I second that motion.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? I'll take a roll call vote on that. All in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. Marv?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
Myself is aye. Clint?
Aye.
And Dave?
Aye.
Okay, Your type 3 variance request has been granted. On to the next one, the placing a home within the setback to a feedlot. Let's see. I'm going to talk to myself a little bit here. I gotta change my worksheets, otherwise I'll get mixed up. I might get mixed up anyway. All right, we're gonna start out with Brent on this one. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Marv?
I'm going to say no because of the 1,000-foot setback.
Okay, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
And Brent?
Yes.
Okay, number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And myself is yes. Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Starting out with Dave. Brucher?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Easy for you to say. Number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Marv?
No.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave?
I'm going to have to say yes, I guess. I'll be the deciding vote on this one, so.
Okay. Does the, number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Mark?
Yes.
Okay, all of the questions have been answered to the affirmative. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd make that motion.
Okay, motion to allow to place the home within the setback to the feedlot.
I'll second that.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll start out the vote. Aye or nay. Start out with Brent.
Aye.
Myself is aye. Clint?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
And Marv?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead,
I'd
Clint.
just like to, quick, before everybody leaves, was it August 30th?
Yes.
August 30th, we're having a hearing like this on ordinance changes. I'd encourage all 3 of you groups to come and voice your opinions, maybe try and understand it. That's your voice that can, to change some things or not. So if you know other people that'd be interested in that, bring them in. We want to hear. It gives the county commissioner something to hear and make their decisions either easier or harder, but that's what we want. So I just wanted to this is a problem because of some of them things. I think this is a good group to come and get some questions answered.
I wanted to add to that I want you all to know out here that this sitting here is not easy, the decisions that we are faced with. And you know, the decisions I make here, some of them I don't, you know, we're doing our best up here, okay, to all of you. So, thank you.
That's yours.
Can I have my pen back?
That's yours. Okay, thank you, everybody, for your patience and your input. Thanks for coming to this meeting. Next item on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. We discussed some corrections. Sharon's going to make those corrections. Just a minor detail.
Mr. Chair,
Anything else? Go ahead.
I'd make a motion that we approve the corrected minutes.
Okay, I'll second that.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion is made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, new business?
Mr. Chair, I don't have any,
Okay, old business?
none of that either.
After the meeting business?
I don't have any.
I thought we were going to get the business after the meeting. But anyway, I guess we're ready to adjourn. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I'll second the motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion to adjourn has been, 7:58 adjournment.